My girlfriend looked me dead in the eye and said she wasn't in love with me anymore, but she wanted to keep living together as roommates. She wanted my salary paying the rent while she played the field. So, I became the perfect roommate. I stopped paying for her food, cut off her phone, and watched her life crumble until she begged me to take her back. Little did she know, the ultimate payback was just getting started. Thank you for being here. Please comment the letter Y below so I know you are ready, and sit back while I tell you the whole story. It was a Tuesday night, and the apartment was quiet except for the low hum of the television. I was 28 years old, working as a software engineer, and I thought my life was perfectly on track. My girlfriend, Lily, was 26. We had been together for 3 years and living together for the last 18 months. I loved her. I truly did. I was the kind of guy who believed in loyalty, in building a foundation, and in taking care of the people who matter to you. I was sitting on the couch, reviewing some code on my laptop for a major project at work. Lily was curled up on the other end of the couch, scrolling through her phone. The television was playing some home renovation show we usually watch together, but neither of us was really paying attention. I closed my laptop, rubbed my tired eyes, and leaned over to kiss her goodnight. I had an early morning meeting and needed to get some sleep. She didn't lean in. She stiffened, pulled back, and gave me a look I will never forget. It wasn't anger. It wasn't sadness. It was complete and utter indifference. She picked up the remote, muted the television, and turned her body to face me. The silence in the room suddenly felt heavy, like the air pressure had dropped before a massive storm. "Mason," she said, her voice completely flat. "We need to talk." Any man who has been in a relationship knows that phrase. It never leads to anything good. I sat back down, the exhaustion of the workday instantly vanishing, replaced by a cold knot in my stomach. "What's going on?" I asked. She didn't hesitate. She didn't look away or fidget. She just delivered the blow right to my chest. "I like you as a person, Mason. I really do. And I enjoy living with you. But I am not in love with you anymore. I haven't been for months." I sat there stunned. The words echoed in my head, but my brain refused to process them. We hadn't been fighting. There were no screaming matches, no slammed doors. Just a quiet, slow drift that I had completely missed because I was too busy working to provide for us. "I wanted to be honest with you," she continued, her tone so calm it was almost clinical. "I respect you too much to keep pretending. It's just not there anymore." I looked around the living room, at the couch I bought, the television I paid for, the rug she picked out that I put on my credit card. My mind was racing, trying to find a logical explanation. "So, what does this mean?" I finally managed to ask, my voice sounding hollow even to my own ears. "Are you moving out?" Lily shook her head, a small, practical smile forming on her lips. "No, I don't want to do that. I was hoping we could just continue living together as friends. We work well as roommates, Mason. There is no reason to mess up a good thing. We have a great apartment, a comfortable routine. I value our friendship, and I don't want to lose that by making things complicated." I stared at her. She wanted to break my heart, end our relationship, but keep the roof over her head that my salary paid for. She wanted the financial security I provided, the lifestyle I maintained, without any of the commitment or love. It was the most selfish, calculated proposal I had ever heard in my life. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. The shock was too deep for tears. I just stood up slowly. "I need to think about this," I said. I turned my back on her, walked into the bedroom, and closed the door. I lay down on the bed in the dark, staring up at the ceiling. The woman I had planned to marry, the woman I had supported through thick and thin, had just demoted me to an ATM machine and a roommate. About 20 minutes later, the room lit up. It was our shared iPad sitting on the nightstand. It buzzed once, then twice, then 5 times in rapid succession. I rolled over and picked it up. Lily's Apple ID was synced to the device. She was typing in a group chat with her best friends. I shouldn't have looked, but the screen was glaring in the dark room, and her name was right there. I tapped the screen. What I saw in those messages changed the trajectory of my entire life. It was the moment the man who loved Lily died, and the man who would tear her world apart was born. Before I tell you what was in those messages, you need to understand how we got to that dark bedroom. You need to understand what I sacrificed for this woman, and why her betrayal cut so deep. When I first met Lily 3 years ago, she was a completely different person. Or at least, she played the part of a different person flawlessly. We met at a local coffee shop. I was working on my laptop, and she accidentally spilled her drink on my table. She was incredibly apologetic, offering to pay for my dry cleaning, insisting on buying me a new coffee. We started talking and we just clicked. At the time, Lily was fiercely independent. She was 23, fresh out of college, working as a junior graphic designer for a mid-sized marketing firm downtown. She had her own tiny studio apartment on the other side of the city. She paid her own rent, handled her own bills, and drove a beat-up Honda Civic that she maintained herself. She never asked me for a dime. In fact, she insisted on splitting the bill on our first 3 dates. That independence was exactly what attracted me to her. I grew up working class. My dad was a mechanic and my mom worked retail. They taught me the value of a hard-earned dollar. I busted my back in college, taking out loans and working night shifts at a warehouse to get my degree in computer science. By the time I met Lily, I was doing very well for myself. I had landed a high-paying job as a software engineer, and my salary was far more than I needed. But I lived simply. I drove a reliable truck, wore plain clothes, and saved aggressively. I didn't want a woman who loved my wallet. I wanted a partner who loved me. So I kept my financial status quiet. I told her I made a decent living, but I never mentioned the massive stock options or the aggressive investment portfolio I was building. For the first year and a half, things were perfect. We went on hiking trips, cooked dinners together in her tiny kitchen, and talked about the future. She told me about her dreams of starting her own design agency. I told her about my goal of running my own tech firm. We were a team. Then the economy took a dip, and her marketing firm downsized. Lily was one of the first people let go. She was devastated. She came over to my place, crying, terrified about how she was going to pay her rent and keep her head above water. That was the moment the dynamic shifted. As a man, my instinct was to protect and provide. I hated seeing her stressed. I told her to pack her bags. My apartment was a spacious 2-bedroom place closer to downtown. I told her she could move in with me, focus on her freelance graphic design work, and not worry about the rent until she got back on her feet. She hugged me, crying tears of relief. She promised it would only be temporary. She promised she would contribute as soon as she landed a few big clients. I believed her. I loved her, and when you love someone, you step up. You carry the weight when they can't. So she moved in. First, she tried. She used the last of her savings to buy groceries once in a while. She helped keep the place clean. But the freelance graphic design market was brutal. Months went by, and she was barely making enough to cover her personal credit card minimums, let alone contribute to the household. I didn't care. I had just received a massive promotion at work, elevating me to a senior lead engineer. My salary skyrocketed. I was making more money than I knew what to do with. But again, I kept the exact numbers to myself. I told her I got a small bump in pay and that I could comfortably handle all our living expenses. I took over everything. I paid the rent for our 2-bedroom apartment. I paid the electric bill, the water bill, the internet. I bought all the groceries. When her beat-up Honda Civic needed new brakes, I quietly paid the mechanic. I didn't want her to feel guilty, so I just acted like it was no big deal. I was investing in our future. I thought I was building a life with my future wife. I thought she would appreciate the sacrifice, the safety net I had spread out for her. But humans are funny creatures. When you give someone a luxury for free, they are grateful for a week. After a month, it becomes a habit. After a year, it becomes an expectation. And that is exactly what happened with Lily. The independent, hardworking girl I met slowly vanished, replaced by someone who felt entitled to the life I was working 60 hours a week to provide. The transition didn't happen overnight. It was a slow fade. It started with the little things. In the beginning, when I went grocery shopping, I would buy the basics. But soon, Lily started leaving lists on the kitchen counter. Not just lists for milk and bread, but specific expensive brands. She wanted organic, grass-fed beef. She wanted the $10 jars of almond butter. She wanted the imported Italian sparkling water. I didn't complain. I grabbed the cart, walked down the aisles, and loaded up everything she asked for. I swiped my card at the register, watching the grocery bills double, then triple. Then came the phone bill. She was complaining one evening about her service provider overcharging her. I told her it was ridiculous for us to be on separate plans. I called my provider, added her line to my account, and upgraded her to the newest iPhone while I was at it. I told her it was cheaper this way. I never asked her for her share of the monthly bill. It just became another automatic deduction from my checking account. Her car insurance was next. Her policy lapsed because she forgot to pay it. She came to me in a panic, terrified she would get pulled over. I calmly went online, added her car to my premium policy, and paid the 6-month premium upfront. I was managing the entire household. If a light bulb burned out, I changed it. If the sink leaked, I fixed it. I managed our social calendar. If we were going out with our friends on a Friday night, I was the one calling the restaurant to make reservations. And when the check came, I was the one pulling out my wallet to pay for everyone's appetizers and drinks. Lily stopped thanking me. She stopped mentioning her plan to get a full-time job. She slept in until 10 o'clock every morning while I was up at 6, drinking a quick cup of coffee before fighting traffic to get to the office. She would spend her days networking at local cafes, which mostly consisted of drinking expensive lattes and scrolling through social media. The worst part was how she started treating my time and my money as if they were hers by right. One Saturday, I had just finished a brutal week at work. I was exhausted and looking forward to watching a football game on the couch. Lily came out of the bedroom dressed to the nines. "Get up," she said, tossing her purse over her shoulder. "I invited Chloe and Sarah to that new seafood place on the waterfront for lunch. We need to go." I blinked at her. "You invited them? You didn't ask me." "I shouldn't have to ask you, Mason," she sighed, rolling her eyes like I was a child acting out. "It's the weekend. We are going out. Hurry up and get dressed." I swallowed my frustration. I put on my shoes, drove us to the restaurant, and sat there for 2 hours listening to her and her friends gossip about people I didn't know. When the bill came, over $300 for seafood towers and mimosas, Lily didn't even reach for her purse. She just looked at me expectantly. I handed the waiter my credit card. Chloe and Sarah thanked Lily for the meal. Lily smiled and accepted the thanks, as if she had paid for it herself. I was becoming a ghost in my own relationship. A very well-funded, hard-working ghost. I provided the structure, the money, and the logistics, and she provided nothing but her presence. And then, there was the issue of my career. I was rising fast in the tech world. I was leading teams, securing massive contracts. But Lily didn't care. Whenever I tried to talk to her about a breakthrough I had at work, her eyes would glaze over. She would quickly change the subject to her friend's new designer handbag or some drama on reality television. She viewed my job solely as the mechanism that funded her lifestyle, not as something I was passionate about or proud of. I convinced myself this was just a rough patch. I told myself that once her freelance business finally took off, she would regain her pride and our partnership would balance out. I was blinded by my own loyalty. I was so committed to being a good man, a reliable provider, that I completely failed to see I was being taken for an absolute ride. I was enabling a monster of entitlement, and that monster was about to introduce me to the people who created her. If you want to know why a person acts the way they do, look at their parents. 2 years into our relationship, Lily's parents, Robert and Susan, moved closer to the city. That's when the real nightmare began, and the disrespect was cranked up to a level I had never experienced. Robert was a middle manager at an insurance firm who wore cheap suits and acted like he was the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Susan was a housewife who spent her days trying to project an image of old money wealth that they absolutely did not possess. They worshipped Lily. To them, she was the golden child, a princess who deserved the absolute best the world had to offer. And in their eyes, I was most certainly not the best. They invited us to dinner at a high-end steakhouse downtown. I knew exactly how this would play out. Robert would order the most expensive bottles of wine, complain about the service, and then mysteriously forget his wallet or excuse himself to the restroom when the check arrived. I had already accepted that I would be paying the bill. We sat down, and the interrogation began before the appetizers even arrived. "So, Mason," Robert said, swirling his red wine and looking at me down his nose. "Still typing away at a keyboard all day? Any plans to move into real management? A position with actual authority and a real salary?" I gripped my fork tightly under the table. I was managing a team of 20 engineers and my salary was likely triple what Robert made. But I kept my mouth shut. "I enjoy the engineering side, Robert. It pays the bills." Susan scoffed, a sharp, ugly sound. "Paying the bills isn't everything, Mason. Lily is a creative soul. She needs a certain lifestyle. She needs to be surrounded by culture and luxury, not just scraping by in an apartment. We live in a luxury high-rise downtown. Susan," I pointed out, my voice tight, "and I pay for all of it." Lily kicked me under the table. "Stop it, Mason. Don't be rude to my mother." "I'm not being rude," I said, looking at Lily. "I'm just stating a fact." Robert leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "We ran into the Henderson family at the country club last week. You remember their son, Julian? The one who went to an Ivy League school. He just got back from Europe. His grandfather passed away, left him a massive inheritance. The kid is set for life, has his own trust fund. That's the kind of security a young woman needs." The mention of the keyword inheritance wasn't subtle. It was a direct insult. He was parading this Julian guy in front of me, making it clear that old money and trust funds were what they valued, not the blue-collar work ethic I used to build my career. "Julian is very handsome, too," Susan added, looking pointedly at Lily. "Always dressed impeccably. He drives a Ferrari now, Such a successful young man." I looked at Lily, expecting her to defend me, to tell her parents that I treated her well, that I supported her entirely. But she just looked down at her plate, a small blush creeping up her neck. She didn't say a word. She let them disrespect me, right to my face, while I sat there paying for the $100 steaks they were chewing. Later that evening, after I had dropped $500 on their dinner, we were driving home. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white. "Why didn't you say anything?" I asked Lily, the anger finally bleeding into my voice. "They sat there insulting my job, insulting my ability to provide for you, and you said